Welcome to the Lead Up Leadership Podcast. Hear from rising leaders and seasoned leaders across various industries to see about their leadership journey and how you can level up your leadership game. Here's your host, Renato G. Lead up!
Alrighty, we are back with another episode of the Lead Up Leadership Podcast, and I'm excited with my special guest. I met this gentleman, I want to say it was 2 years ago at this relationship panel. I don't know if he remembers, at Sac State with brother Kaifa. And I remember this dude. I have seen him in passing, but I never really met him. And, you know, just based on the responses that he was giving during the panel, I was like, man, there's something about this dude. You know, his character, he's focused, he's committed. And just during that time when I was at Sac State, got to know him more just through different things, and was just a big fan, you know, from afar, seeing him do his own thing, not only on campus in his job, but also outside his 9-to-5, which we'll get into during this episode. So I want to introduce none other than Mr. FYB himself, Mr. Josiah Greer. What's going on, sir?
What's going on, brother, man? Thank you for the opportunity. Glad to be here.
Of course. And I was just telling right before we, press the record button, it just happens to be Wise Word Wednesday, man. So, which we'll hopefully get a little more into that. But just real quick, if you could just share a little bit about who you are, where you're from, maybe just a little synopsis of, what's your story?
Yeah. So like you mentioned earlier, my name is Josiah Greer. I'm from Richmond, California. It's a small city in the Bay Area, little itty bitty city. I work at Sac State as he mentioned as an enrollment coordinator for the Educational Opportunity Program. Been in that particular role for a little over a year. Prior to that, I was in the admissions office at Sac State as an admissions counselor, outreach counselor. So I would travel up and down California to, recruit specifically for Sac State for admissions purposes. And also, a motivational speaker, an entrepreneur. And the future's first self-made billionaire in my family. So
ooh, I love that. Oh man. So let's actually start there, man, with the entrepreneurship and motivational speaking. So as I mentioned, I saw a lot of, whether it's on social media, just different events, man. Like even recently, you got an opportunity to share, I think it was Channel Islands, right?
Yeah.
So let's start with FYB. What is FYB and what's the purpose behind that?
Yeah, so FYB, it stands for Fire Your Boss, and really what we're trying to just kind of push this idea that you're the most important person to you, and a lot of times people think that they have a boss at their job or they have a boss wherever they go to earn income, but ultimately that's a supervisor, and I think that the language is important because if you're calling somebody the boss of you, think about it like this, back in the days, even whether you've seen this in movies or not, but, you used to have to call the prison guards boss, you know what I mean? And so if that's the case, that you were calling the prison guards boss and then you're calling your supervisor boss, well then what you're saying is that you don't have any type of ability to control what you do, and so we try to push that idea that, you're the most important person to you. You have people that supervise what you do, but ultimately you have the decision to make. And you have to be willing to accept the consequences or the benefits that come with making those particular decisions. And so that's what we try to teach people, is just understand that you are the most important person. You have the final say so in what you do with your life, not anybody else. And once you start using that difference in language, I think that's just like the first step. It's like, that's not like, oh, I'm done now, I'm my own boss. That's literally the beginning. And then it starts with, now, okay, what does a boss look like to you? What does a boss do? Are you doing that? And if you're not, then you got to make some changes, because, everybody want to be boss until it's time to be the.
Right. That was dope. And I love the purpose and the message behind it. Man, what was like the origin of like, what led to that? Like, was there a defining moment for you? Or was like, revelation for you of like, man, what was that mindset that switched of what you're speaking on?
I think ultimately it was maturity. I was hanging out with some of my bros. We were in Tahoe at the time, just away at a cabin with each other. That kind of we kind of cultivated our minds, and we just, and certain people get together, just like, when you and I was talking at the Brother Dwight Taylor's event and things like that. When we get together, at some point, somebody's going to ask a question that's going to spark a conversation that's just going to keep going. And ultimately what we just decided was like, we do not want to spend the next 35 years of our life working from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and then looking forward to dinner and then going to sleep and doing that all over again. Right. And, looking forward to the weekend, and so we said, okay, what are the steps that we can take to make that happen? And because that's what, when we look at some of the top 1% in America, they're not working hard Monday through Friday and then expecting a 2-day weekend. They're finding ways to be able to utilize their time. And so we want, and all of us that we're under this decision making, we are all first generation, college students. We were all literally like starting from scratch, just scratching the surface as far as understanding or comprehending what type of work it's going to take. And so this was about 4 years ago when we made that decision, and we just kind of been rocking and going hard ever since. And it's constant improvement, constant learning, constant growth. But it's lovely. Yeah,
that's awesome, man. And so kind of switching gears, but I think there's a combination with the FYB in there. Motivational speaking, you're right, you mentioned opportunities that you've had recently, even a couple of years ago. Where did that initially start, and what was kind of like the driving force to get into that? A lot of times, or at least, the people I follow, like a Eric Thomas, right? And hearing his story, and other guys like a Kevin Bracey, who I know you're really connected with, man, like that stuff is like, or at least from my eyes, because I'm not the best communicator, but it's a very hard lane to get into, right? At least from my perspective. I'm curious to hear more from just you of like, what led you to want to pursue that more than just like either just a passion, but really something serious that now you're sharing your gift, to other places and other groups of people.
Yeah, I feel like, honestly, I think this is something that I was just kind of called to do. Honestly, I feel like it was my natural gift. Some people's natural gift, like Kobe Bryant's natural gift was basketball. That. Like LeBron James, natural ability to be able to play. Of course, dedication to the craft as well. Correct. Where it made it become the greatest, but you can tell that this person was naturally able to just excel in this particular type of field than everyone else. I can't LeBron James because I'm not 6'8". You know what I'm saying? Like, so I feel like this is what I was born to do. But what I will say is my mother did a great job in making sure that I enhanced my skill, or I continually developed my skill as a public speaker as a whole. And that started from a long time ago in church, and my mom always had me out there speaking, in little Bible study sessions and stuff. So that's where I think I got rid of the fear of being able to speak in front of people. I was never really afraid as an adult to speak, because I'm like, I've been doing this since I was a kid. I cried a long time ago. I had my worst days, and far the people. So that's where it started from, but it really started to kind of make a shift a few years ago when I met Kevin Bracey, KB. I got a chance to get connected with him and Dwight Taylor Sr. And really they were able to kind of show me what real speaking as a profession looked like, because I had a desire to do it. I didn't understand what it took to be able to kind of just those fine tuning, right? It's like a martial artist can practice martial arts themselves greatly, but it's something about when you get to that dojo, right? And you master there, and the master is able to say, kick your foot up a little higher right there. Oh, don't forget to turn your head, so I needed those fine tuning, and that's what they were able to do to be able to show me the best way to be the best me. And so I just kind of took off from there, and eventually, I did one event and then another event and another event and another event. It just kind of started rolling ever since then, a couple of years ago.
Man, that's dope. First, shout out to Kevin Bracey and shout out to Dwight Taylor Sr. Amazing dudes. And I love how you brought like kind of this analogy of a dojo. I'm curious, kind of getting a little bit more specific, like what does that dojo look like for you? How are you fine tuning those things on your craft? Like, I don't know if you can speak on anything recently of things that you've noticed from maybe a year or 2 years ago to now. We're like, yep, this is like something that I've practiced and I can see a difference now.
Yeah, I think it just comes with continuous practice. And the hardest thing about public speaking is the only way to do it is to do it in front of people. Right. Like I can practice all I want behind closed doors. And that don't get me wrong, that's a part of the process as well too. Yeah. But it's another thing when you're in front of 500 people, you're in front of 700 people, you're in front of 1,000 people. It's not going to be the same as if you were in your closet, talking to yourself in the mirror. Right. So it's a tough thing to do, because that means that you have to be willing to make mistakes in front of a live audience and be willing to capitalize on those mistakes immediately. I remember I was doing a speech for Butte College a couple of years ago, and maybe this was last summer, for the Roadrunner Rush event. And as I was flipping through my PowerPoint, I realized that the actual presentation that I uploaded was not the final draft of my presentation. It was actually the pre-final draft, right? And so what I thought was about to pop up didn't pop up. But because I had practiced so much on my own, I knew I had memorized this PowerPoint. So I was able to still spot, but it's still training, right? That was practice to let me know you have to make sure you know exactly which PowerPoint it is when you go up there. Run through the slides, look at them before you actually present. So it's just, again, it's on the spot training that kind of fine-tuned it, but it's also being aware of the other people, never thinking that I'm the best, going through and listening to people like Kevin Bracey, like Dwight Taylor Sr., like Eric Thomas, listening to following different people on social media that are, great speakers, or even the upcoming and developing speakers. I follow people like that too, like Levi Ferguson, those are people who they're still up and coming, but they still have a certain quality that I feel like I need to be better at. And watching that, I'm able to say, oh, maybe I need to do some edits to my Wise Word Wednesdays to make them look a little differently. Maybe I need a camera. Maybe I need a better sound engineer. Maybe I need to put some music behind it. So these are different ways that I'm able to really, like I said, fine tune in that dojo, and realizing that I'm not perfect. There's always ways that I can, become better.
No, that's great, man. It's those simple adjustments, which I have noticed in the past couple of videos when it comes to your Wise Word Wednesday, in terms of the quality and the different things that you're doing, how you're setting it up. It makes a difference. So I can definitely attest to that. And kind of sticking still with the dojo, there's one part of, going to the dojo and, going through the different techniques, or you're practicing, right, the improvement that you're talking about. But there are times, right, if we're talking about the dojo, where maybe an individual might feel unmotivated to go, right? I'm just not feeling to go to do this thing today. Or they might recognize that they have a natural gift, whether it's speaking or creative ideas or different things of that nature, but they just don't have that drive. Can you talk about, what drives you, and how can other, young leaders, right? Because this podcast is dedicated for young people to, that are rising to, whether they want to level up in their industry or they want to be an entrepreneur. What drives you, and how can other people find their drive?
It's difficult to say, because I think everybody's story is different, right? And so we all start from the same, level of playing field, and we all don't struggle the same way with this. So somebody, their drive may be like, they're depressed. Well, the way that a depressed person may not necessarily start their engine the same way that a person who just deals with anxiety would start their engine. So I do want to, be respectful and understand that everybody's process isn't the same. But, like Renato said, I'm going to use my story, and hopefully this may encourage some person as well too. So going into my story, I think that I come from like I said, first generation, college student within my family. So for me, it's a lot different, because where I come from was, low income family, housing and free lunch programs and things like that. And so there was a certain level of broke that I was, saying that I was, just keeping it real.
Yeah.
Right. So when you're that broke, like for me, that's a fear of mine. That's a traumatic experience, to not be able to afford certain things, or not be able to do certain things as a youngster. And again, it's no discredit to my mother, no discredit to my father. It doesn't no discredit to anything like that, or to anybody whose parents are struggling like that as well too. But it's just, that was traumatic for me, and it's a place that I never want to go back to. And so there's no way that I can give up on this idea of what happiness looks like. And I'm not talking about just monetary happiness. I mean, happiness as far as being able to be satisfied when I come home and lay down at night, and knowing that I did the best that I can do with this particular day. And it doesn't mean that I worked 24/7. It doesn't mean that as soon as I got out the bed, I was working, grind. But it just means that I was useful of my time, and that I'm satisfied with what I did. And for me, I know that there's a certain level of effort, of work that I have to put in a day before I'm able to be satisfied. It may not be just during motivational speaking. Maybe I'm working on my classes. Maybe I'm working on my happiness. Maybe I'm working on just, my appreciation for, maybe I'm working on my prayer, whatever it is. I know that if I don't dedicate a certain amount of time towards being successful, there's no way, or towards improving myself, there's no way that I can lay down at night feeling comfortable. And that's the worst feeling for me as a motivational speaker, and probably for anybody that's a motivational speaker, is to lay down at night and say, dang, I did not take advantage of today. And some people, like, there are days where that's happened. The next day, believe me, I'm back on track, So that's what's motivating me, is my past. It's coming from, realizing that, being a person who was kicked out of high school, being a person who was in trouble, in high school a lot for just a bunch of different things, there's no way that I'm willing to take myself back to that, that type of mentality, that type of lifestyle. And so in refusing to do that, the only way for me to go is forward, because I'm not accepting anything less than what I feel like I deserve based on my traumatic experience growing up.
Man, that's huge. You said a lot of great stuff, and you're absolutely right. There are different drivers for different folks, from different walks of life. And I think one of the biggest things that has changed for me, and I think you can attest, is becoming more self-aware and having those people that, can speak into your life, maybe point out those blind spots, and point out the things that are actually good, right? Like, hey, you're really good at this, right? Maybe things that we never considered before. As someone that, again, you have your day job, but also pursuing your other endeavors, how do you try to, with all the different things that are going on, not even just in this time, but, trying to accomplish this, trying to meet this goal, how can you maintain that level of like staying grounded? I know for a lot of times, for myself and maybe other people I've talked to, our attention goes many different ways, right? Like, there's one person that's doing this, I'm gonna try this out, or they try this other thing. How do you continue to stay focused and grounded in what you're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, I think this, I'm going to kind of take this from KB, Kevin Bracey. I think that it's really about limiting what goes in, because a lot of times we're distracted because there's so much that we're allowing into our space, into our energy. And I've been more cautious of that. And so I'll do things like, I log out of Instagram. After I post, I log out, and logged out of Facebook. I'm logged out of different apps, social media apps, because I realized how much time I was wasting looking at something else. You know what I mean? Looking at other people's accomplishments, looking at other people's successes. Right. And so, and again, there are times where that's very necessary and useful, like but I shouldn't be spending 7 hours on my phone, you know what I'm saying, throughout the week, just scrolling through other people's, you know what I mean? It's okay. Now, a couple hours less than that, it's okay. But I think for me personally, that's just too much time that I couldn't spend doing something else, and so for me, that helps me. Like, if I'm logging into Instagram, I ask myself, what's the reason you're about to type in your password? I even had to say, don't remember password on my phone, because again, it makes it too fast to access. So I have to say, what's the reason you're typing in your password? If you don't have a legitimate reason, there's no point in doing this. Log back out. There's no point. And so that's allowed me to save some time, even though it's only a couple hours a week. It still allowed me to save some time. And in that time, when you start to do that, you start to realize, I actually can do more than what I thought I can do throughout the day. It's just I wasn't distracted. And the types of things that other people have put on social media, which comes into my subconscious, and now I'm actually thinking and processing that information subconsciously. Now it's distracting me from getting on focus or getting on point with what I need. So just limiting what goes in, so that way what goes out can only be from me as much as possible, not other people's desires or dreams or wants and things like that.
Man, that's so good. I think you just challenged me on trying to log out now on my social media. So I'm gonna do my best, because you're absolutely right. I think I can get so accustomed to just going in, not asking myself for what reason. And now my time has been consumed, and I've learned more and more as I tell myself that I want to do things, but sometimes my actions don't line up. Right. And so I have to take ownership on that.
Yeah. Yeah. But I give everybody a pass for 2020 because of quarantine. Like I get it. So this is the 1 year where it's like, I understand, you know, everybody's in quarantine. So I get it. Again, just limiting it, you know what I mean? If usually, you know, you're during quarantine, you're on it for 10 hours a week, you know, maybe dropping it down to 9 and just seeing what you could have that extra 1 hour throughout the day. It's, you know, it's that's the way it starts. And then you start to realize, oh, I could do more and more and more. And you just, you know, get better.
Yeah. Is there something that you have worked on that, you know, there's just different things. I always think about, you know, sports analogies and, you know, different things that I look at when people are trying to level up their game, right? Mm-hmm. Was there something kind of like within your tool belt or set of skills that you're like, I know I need to work on this, but this is going to be a tough one for me to like really get, you know, going back to the dojo example, like, I know this is going to take some refining. Was there anything something in your repertoire was like, yep, this is going to take laser focus, you know, some time, months to put in and make sure that it's going to be the best that it can be?
Absolutely, man. Honestly, this is real personal. My mentality, you know, and I know it's crazy. You would think that, like, as a motivational speaker, you would think that I'm always great, you know, but nah, I actually have really, really bad days, really down days. And so what I realized that I have to make sure my mentality is correct so that way I can help other people get their minds correct. And so it started with therapy. So now I've been doing therapy every week. And for me, that has just been so revealing because I'm understanding so much of myself, going back to the certain experiences that I had as a youngin', and that shapes my reality as to why I behave a certain way. Mm-hmm. And so when life is constantly about improving and learning who you are and developing who you are as an individual, because obviously, you know, for the first 18 years of your life, you were your parents' child. And so you were learning the way that your parents saw fit. And there's no knock to that, no knock to your parents, but at the end of the day, you're still your own person. And so what happens is from 18, you're going to be you're going to be young a lot less than you are going to be old.
Right.
You know? And so from 18 all the way till 80, you know, who are you? What does that mean when you have the freedom to do whatever you please without your parents telling you what to do? And so that's when you really start to develop your own personality. And so I'm unlearning a lot of the bad habits that I picked up on. Unbeknownst to my parents, they didn't realize that these were their bad habits. They were doing the best that they could do.
Of course.
That means that there's ways that I needed to improve on myself. So improving my mind really has been something that I've been cracking down on for the past few months, because it's important to me, because the hardest battles aren't when I'm in front of a stage. The hardest battles for me, again, I've been doing that since I was a kid. I could literally speak like just, you know, off the top of my head.
Yeah.
The hardest battles are when nobody's around, when I'm sitting at home by myself during quarantine trying to figure out life. That's when the battles become hard, you know, when the gym isn't available, when, you know what I'm saying, when class isn't available. You know, I can't go on the campus and see, you know, 30,000 students and, you know, they can brighten up my day. You know, that's when it's a real struggle. And so I figured that's what I had to realize, get myself together mentally so that way I can be strong enough to handle the types of things that a billionaire could possibly go through. Because you can't say that you want this type of pressure, you know, without being prepared for it. You know, you can't, like I said, going to the dojo, you can't say you want to be a black belt without, you know, going through some stuff that black belts have to go through. And so it's just about being flexible and being that, learning and growing.
Man, thank you again for being personal, man, just sharing that part about, I know that for myself, having mentors, you know, older mentors, and or whether it's, you know, I go to church, you know, a pastor, someone that, you know, in a way is therapeutic, is super, super key. There are things that, you know, just wise words, right? Wise word Wednesday. There's these nuggets of wisdom that get imparted, and it kind of allows me to step back from certain situations or issues that I'm so focused in on, that kind of like lift off of me, right? And so I appreciate you sharing that, man. And speaking of 18-year-olds, man, knowing what you know now, and I know you have so much more to learn and grow as you are doing, but knowing what you know now, if you could talk to your 18-year-old self, or, talk to a up and coming, maybe somebody that is interested in motivational speaking or wanted to pursue being a billionaire, you know, what are you telling this 18-year-old?
I'm telling 18-year-olds, I'm going to say that buckle up because it's going to be a long ride. But in the words of the late Nipsey Hussle the Great, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And so although you're going to experience some rocky things, some things that you probably you're probably telling yourself right now, if you experience, there's no way you're going to make it through that. But you can make it through it. And the crazy part is you making it through it is actually going to help you be successful or ready for the type of success that you're going to receive because you made it through that specific time. Literally, when I struggle, it's crazy because that particular struggle sets me up for something great. And it's like, it's almost to the point where like when things go bad, I start to get kind of excited, like, ooh, well, what's going on? Like, what am I preparing for? Because at the end of every struggle for me, honestly, has been success in some way, shape, or form. And so I would tell every 18-year-old, you're about to go through it. It's going to be tough. It's going to be difficult. You might think you're not strong enough. You might think you're not capable, but I promise you, you are. And that struggle is going to set you up for some success that you couldn't even imagine at that particular time.
That's awesome. At the end of the struggle, there's success. That's great, man. I know you mentioned FIB. You're shooting for the star to be a self-made billionaire. What's next for you? What are you hoping to do to end this 2020, but even moving forward into the next year and the next couple of years? Where do you see yourself? What are you involved in? What projects are in the works?
Yeah, I mean, we're still on the podcast. We have the FYB podcast.
Yep.
It's the IV. It's IIV. We kind of took a step away, just obviously with it being quarantine. And I know that we could have done like the way we're doing now and doing it digitally. But there's something about when we're in the same room with each other that to me it just can't be. It can't be duplicated. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, it has to be there because the different vibes. And I know that like, maybe it's just me being a perfectionist, but like, it doesn't sound the same, coming from the Zoom type. So we're still working on that. We're going to have some episodes coming up relatively soon. In fact, we're probably going to record this weekend.
There you go.
So we got some episodes coming up for that. But then it's also just developing my craft. I had to change completely from being an in-person speaker to now, speaking to people digitally. And I realized that it's not the same, it doesn't have the same effect. And that's really because I'm an energy person, so you can hear my energy in my voice and you can feel it in my actions and the way that I move when I'm talking, when I'm speaking. So I had to adjust and just, again, watching some great people like the ETs, like the Kevin Bracey's, the Dwight Taylor Seniors, even watching, Cole. Like Cole has been super dope as well. Shout out to Cole, and so watching these people develop and learn and grow, it's caused me to step my game up as well and elevate. So I'm like, just working on making my presentation a better one. And in the future, my goal is in 2021 to develop a curriculum that we can take into classes or into schools, elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, where it's like a once a month program. We're going to start with allowing people to set goals. We're going to address, did you meet those goals, or how are you in those goals? And then address if you met those goals. And if you didn't, how can we address, fixing those and what to talk about what. So it's really like a developmental program that I think would be very, very helpful for all ages, K through 12 specifically though. And so that's my goal, to implement that in particular local high schools and middle schools and elementary schools.
That's dope, man. Excited to see that journey and that process. If people want to stay connected with you, whether it's through the podcast or kind of just seeing your own journey as you're speaking, and what can they do? How can they stay in touch with you?
Definitely follow me on social media. Instagram is at Joe Spida. That's JOSPYDA_FYB. I'll say it again. JOSPYDA_FYB. Or you can follow the FYB page on Instagram at _FireYourBoss. And that's _FireYourBoss on Instagram as well. My Twitter's the same as my Instagram. Facebook is the same as my Instagram, although I'm very weary as far as who I accept on Facebook. So if I don't know you, I'm probably not accepting you. But the things in my posts are public, so you can still see my posts. You can follow me, but you just won't. We won't be friends unless you better message me or something.
Yeah.
But that's definitely the best way to keep up with me via that, and then the podcast, of course, and then just keep a lookout, because I'm always cooking up something. I'm always working on something. I'm not one to, like, my posts aren't really meant to be bragging. They're more meant just to make people aware, because oftentimes people will tell me, hey, the next time you're doing a speech or something, let me know, and it's like I forget. You know what I mean? Because there's so many people that'll say that, or so I just posted just to give people the opportunity. If you want to check it out, this is where I'll be, and I'm blessed to have that opportunity. So yeah, just keep following me on social media and be on the lookout. And every Wednesday we hitting them with the Wise Word Wednesday. That's going to be consistent.
Yep. And they've been very, very consistent. He got a whole crew, Wise Word Wednesday, folks. So make sure to check out that hashtag. And before we officially wrap up, I want you to fill in this statement. Every leader needs blank.
Oh, I would say every leader needs to know when to follow and when to lead.
Ooh. And just elaborate just a little bit on that, because I could tell there was a lot there.
Yeah. I think that a lot of times leaders think that they always need to be in front of everyone. And that's not, in my opinion, a true leader. I think a leader understands that some people are better than them at something, or even not even that. Some people need to develop themselves at something. And so as a leader, you have to be able to see that. So for instance, I have some people that I supervise in my role within EOP. And so we meet every Monday and we have these discussions about different things. And so sometimes a student an employee will ask me a question that I very much know the answer to. But see, if I just say the answer and I don't give the other people an opportunity to answer that question, then how do I know that they're actually understanding or comprehending what they're supposed to be doing? You know what I mean? Or I don't even give them a chance to celebrate the fact that they've demonstrated that they comprehend what they're supposed to be doing. And so as a leader, instead of answering that question, I sit back and I say, well, does anybody else know the answer to that? See, that's what, in my opinion, that's what a good leader would do. A good leader doesn't just shout out the answer and say, yes, I know it. But a good leader allows other people to lead as well, too. He brings and develops good leaders at the right time. But if there's a time when they need to step in, they understand, okay, this is my position as a leader. So that's what I think. A good leader knows when to follow and when to lead.
That's beautiful, man. You heard it here on the Lead Up podcast. Thank you again, Brother Josiah. I appreciate the time. And I'm excited to see all the successes with individually, collectively, with all that you have going on, man. Much love, much respect, and we'll be in touch hopefully in the near future.
Yes, sir. We fresh. Much love. I appreciate you, Renato.
Yes, sir. We'll catch you guys on the next episode of the Lead Up Leadership Podcast. Peace.